All right, welcome to Office Hours with Stitchcraft Marketing. Today we're going to cover some of the basics of Google Analytics to help you make business decisions. So just real quick, if you aren't familiar with Google Analytics, it's a free tool that you can install on any website, and it's pretty easy to do so. We provide a link here where you can sign up. Again, it's free. And this allows you to get a complete picture of your website's traffic. So that's how people are finding you, where they're from, and the content on your website that they view the most. And you can view all of that in real time by logging in at analytics.google.com. And you can also view historic data that goes back to day one of you installing it on your website. So first, before we go any further, I want to teach you how to speak Google. It's a quick vocabulary lesson. They kind of have their own way of presenting data, and if you don't know what all the terms mean, then you're going to be very confused. So a word you're going to see a lot is users, and that is simply the number of people that have visited your website at least once during a given time period. One user can have multiple sessions, but will still be counted as a single user. There's also sometimes you'll see new users, so that's someone that according to the Google Analytics tracking has never ever visited your website. So just keep that in mind. And also by default, usually the session that a user views your website is they are there and there's only 30 minutes of inactivity before that terminates that session. And then they count as a new user. So it gets a little confusing, but just keep in mind, this is just a way to kind of track people and sort them. So we'll get into that and it'll come up a lot in this presentation. And the view you see here is when you log into your Google Analytics account. This is the front home page, and it'll show you this screen, this exact screen, in fact. So another word that I just used was sessions, and that is a single continual active viewing period by a visitor. So again, it's a little bit nebulous, and it depends on whether or not they're inactive on your website. So that means they could just leave your site up, walk away from the computer goes to sleep, and then 3 hours later, they turn the computer back on, they wake it up, and then it's a new session, if that makes sense. So moving right along, a word you're going to see a lot as well is bounce rate. So that's when someone comes to your website, they view a single page, and then they leave. And they present that in a percentage, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that later in the presentation. So just know that right now, that's what that means. And then session duration, that's another thing that Google really likes to track, and that's just the average amount of time that a user spends on your website. So this will be given during any specific data range. You can specify it. Usually, I think here, this is just for the last 7 days, but you can see it for 30 days or a year, whatever you want. And so it'll take the duration of each session during that range and then divide it by the total number of sessions. And anything over 45 seconds is considered good in this day and age, because we all know that most people have a very short attention span. Another cool thing you can see is active users, and that's people who are currently on your website as you are viewing the data in Google Analytics. So you can actually see all of that in real time. Okay, so now that you know some of the terms, we're going to focus on some ways that you can learn about your website visitors. And we're going to start with some more visualizations that you will see on your overview dashboard. So I showed you the top of that page. If you scroll down, this is the next set of visualizations that you'll see. And we've got time of day, country, and device. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this step by step. So you'll see here I've highlighted, you can toggle down here to choose the window of time for the data that you're viewing. They've got some preset options. You can also enter your own custom time frame, but this is just the default that they'll show you when you log in. We're going to talk about the website visitors by day and time first. This is reported for your time zone, so keep that in mind, provided that's what you have set for your own property, which is what they call a website. But it should be your time zone for all intents and purposes. So you can see over here, all of the bars are, it's like a little heat map almost. The darker the bar means the more visitors. So they're kind of clustered in the middle. This can tell you when an optimal time of day or a specific day would be to schedule something time-based or a limited time offering. So if you only had a 24-hour period of time when people could sign up for something or purchase a specific product, you probably don't want to post that at 9 p.m. at night. You might want to do it kind of in the middle at 8 a.m. when the most people are going to be on your website. We're going to move along to the location data that is provided. So if you click here, location overview, that is going to take you to a really cool map that you can toggle in between views. So this is interactive when you're logged into your dashboard. And the default here is you could see by country. So again, it's color coded. The darker the color, the more people from that location. So continental US and Alaska, but then we've got some other countries here. Now you can also view by city, which is kind of neat. You can also view by continent. And this one I don't find to be as useful, but it's an option. Subcontinent looks kind of similar to the previous one. And then from here, if you just scroll down, you'll see something like this. And this is more specific data tied to each country. So here's where our vocabulary lesson comes into play. Users, new users. Again, I mentioned there's a bit of a splitting hairs here. Users could be repeat users, whereas new users are people who have never ever been to your website. So it kind of splits out those types of visitors into those two categories. And then we also see sessions and bounce rate. So you can view that, again, it's kind of tied to the map above. So you can see this sorted by country, city, continent, or subcontinent, just depending on what you've selected in the previous section. Okay. So next we're going to talk about the devices, how people are viewing your website. From the home screen where you see this, you just clicked on mobile overview. And that'll give you a breakdown of your site visitors by desktop, mobile, and tablet. I think most people are pretty familiar with all three of those ways of viewing, but they also have a nice little graphic here so you can see, oh yes, if you need a refresher. I would tell you to be on the lookout for a high bounce rate in any specific area, especially if it isn't in line with the bounce rate on the others, because that could indicate usability issues. So just keep that in mind. And when you click on the report, you're going to see something, something like that. And it'll break down all the users, sessions, etc. by desktop, mobile, and tablet. So here, speaking of bounce rate, you could see that the bounce rate is all pretty similar. Now, if one of these was like in the 90th percentile, that would tell you there might be a usability issue. So that's why I said that there. All right, at this point, you're probably wondering how all of this can help you and make a business decision. So here are some ways. You can target these countries, continents, cities, whatever, where you're seeing spikes of visitors with paid advertising campaigns. This is something we've done for our clients and we've had a lot of success. The fact that people are visiting your website from these areas means that there's an interest. So that's a great place where you can put your advertising dollars to work. Providing we can ever do in-person events and travel, this is a helpful metric for deciding where to go. You know, where do you already have fans? It might make sense to do a fiber festival there, or a trunk show, or a pop-up shop. Conversely, you might be thinking, well, where am I not seeing people coming to my website from? Like, where do I want to get fans? So then you can start to tailor content to kind of speak to those people. For example, you could create content in other languages or optimize for mobile or tablet users, that kind of thing. So if you aren't seeing visitors from a specific sector, you can kind of reverse engineer from there to try and find ways to get them to come to your website. This can also help you decide where to expand and where not to. So for example, if you actually have retail locations, you might decide, hey, you know, it makes sense to go to this location or not this one. Or if you sell wholesale and you have some constraints on how far apart retailers can be, or, you know, that you give them a zone of where they get to have exclusivity, you can use this data to make sure that you aren't taking on another retailer that could kind of poach their existing customer base. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, scheduling time-based activities like shop updates, live sessions, that sort of thing. You can use this data to make those things more accessible to fans in other time zones. Of course, you know, you can't reach everybody 24/7, but you can reach a greater pool of people this way. And then, of course, identifying usability and accessibility issues. This is just one of many ways that you can try to find any issue that might pop up. You know, if, for example, sometimes if you have a pop-up on your website, if it's not configured for mobile and people can't exit out of it, that's gonna frustrate them. They're gonna exit out and that'll give you a high bounce rate. So that's one such usability issue that this kind of data could bring up for you. Okay. Now, you used to be able to see a lot of other demographic information in your Google Analytics, but with recent privacy laws and that kind of thing, they've really taken away a lot of that, and you have to opt into it. And when I say opt in, that means you have to contact Google directly to enable these types of reports, because you're collecting information that you need to have consent for. So that means you have to update your privacy policy to let people know how and what you're collecting. And if you don't follow Google's guidelines, they could actually kind of ding you. So they make you go through an added hoop to get this information. It's not impossible, but it's something that, you know, if this isn't really that important to you, you don't need to worry about. But when you log in, you will see demographics, and then you'll click on a lot of these things and you'll see something like this: to enable these reports, contact your administrator. So you get excited for a minute and then it's a bit disappointing, but just wanted to touch on that really quick. All right, moving along. So something that our clients find really useful is the referral traffic reports in Google Analytics. So this is just how people find your website, where they're coming from, how you're acquiring users to your site. It's on the overview dashboard. So again, when you log in and you just scroll down till you see this, this is one of the built-in standard reports that they'll show you. And they show this kind of traffic in a number of ways, and it will get confusing. So I'll try and make it pretty cut and dried and simple. The first one is by traffic channel. So this sorts people. In the bottom, you can see a little key into social, direct, referral, organic search, and other. So you're probably wondering, what does all that mean? Well, social channel, I think, speaks for itself. That's people who are finding your website from any social media channel. So that would be Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, whatever, all those standard things. So a direct channel, that's just when people enter your URL directly into whatever browser they use to reach your site. That's what that means. Again, that's pretty cut and dried. Referral channel, here's kind of when we get into splitting hairs territory, but this is basically when another website links to you. So that means someone didn't find you through a search engine. They found you because they were reading someone's blog and they linked to your website, and that person clicked the link to view your website. And then organic channel sources show you traffic from search engine results that are earned, not paid. So what that means is, because the content on your website was relevant to the keywords that the person was searching for, your page was shown in the search results, and that's why they clicked it. You didn't pay to put it at the top, which you can do, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just, it's organic. They found you on their own by Googling something, and you had relevant content, so you answered their question, and that's why they're visiting your website. And then a paid search channel, that's what I'm talking about. So that's if you have a Google AdWords, if you paid to get your page to the top of the search results, that's what that would be. And then there's other. So that's a catch-all term for traffic that's not recognized within Google's default systems. So sometimes with this, you know, a lot of the tracking is affected by the privacy settings of people's browsers. So some people like to browse incognito, or they have ad blocking software or other things to shield them from people collecting their data. And so some people are just going to fall into this other channel. So it happens. You don't really need to worry about it. But if you're wondering why there's an other category, that's why. Okay. So if you click on source and media, oh wait, one more thing, sorry. You're wondering probably what all these little bars mean. So if you hover over one of them, each bar is a day, and it will give you the breakdown as to how many users fit each of these categories: other, organic, search, referral. So it's kind of cool. Again, it's interactive, so when you're logged in, all you have to do is hover and something like this will pop up. Okay. Now we're going to move along to source and medium. Okay, so you know what a source is. That would be something like Pinterest or Ravelry. But this tells you more about how the source sent traffic to your website. So that's why we're seeing source/medium. So here's an example. The medium is how your website's traffic arrived at your website, and Google calls it the general category of the source. So just stay with me for a minute. So for example, the source of your traffic might be Google, but the medium could be organic, cost per click, display, so an ad, or referral. So that's just, again, this is kind of digging deeper into how people get there and just showing you the data in a different way. So a direct source, as mentioned before, someone who entered your URL into the browser, so they aren't going to have a medium, it's none. But if someone is clicking a link on Ravelry, that's why you see ravelry.com/referral. So, and then if you had paid ads like Google AdWords, you would see Google/organic as one option, and then you would see Google/display or Google/CPC as another option down here in the key. Same thing, if you want to see the breakdown, each bar is a day, hover over it and it'll tell you how many users you acquired through each of these methods. So that's kind of cool. And then it seems kind of silly, but referrals, in the referrals. So this just takes out organic and paid, and it just shows you straight up other websites who are sending traffic to your website by the way of a link. So let's see here. This would be your top referring URLs in a given period. Here, this is 7 days. You can do it by whatever you want, 30 days, 6 months, what have you. And then it just helps you visually compare. So if you hover over the bar, you'll see the breakdown similar to the other two reports. Whoops, we don't have one for that, but you'll have to trust me. But there's more ways to view information about your referrals. So when you're in Google Analytics, you'll see this little left-hand bar, And if you click on acquisition, all traffic, this gives you the drop-down menu to just view referrals. That's all you do. Then you'll see something like this. You can adjust the time period. Right now we have August 20th through the 26th, but you can do whatever you want. And you'll see a little chart like this. Okay, then this wants to advance. Uh-oh. Let's see. There we go. So then you can scroll down and you'll see something that is very familiar to you now. And this is where you get to see all the metrics for the users and the sessions and the bounce rates. So here's what you should be looking for when you're looking at this. First, you want to see, are your social media channels strong referrers? And ideally, if you're doing your job right, at least 2 or 3 of them should be in your top 10. So here we've got 4 in the top 10, which is awesome. Ravelry is number 1, Pinterest is number 2. If you see an M or an L before Facebook, that just means it's the mobile version, but it's still Facebook. And then down here, number 9, Linktree. So a lot of people use Linktree as a way to provide a lot of different links from their Instagram profile. So this is really just Instagram. Okay. So, but you can also look for other things. So are other websites linking to you? Did you send product to an influencer to review? If so, you should be seeing some referrals from that. So I've highlighted a few here. And then it's kind of cool. You could see how many people they're sending to your website in that given time frame. So for example, if you know when a review went live and you want to say how many people they sent to your website 30 days after the review went live, this is how you would look at that. And then last but not least, if you have vendors or retailers or some other partners that you work for and they link to you on their website, you can see, whoopsies. Hello, if they are referring traffic to you. So here we have yarn.com and Knitfarious, and you can see how many people they're sending your way. So we've talked a little bit about bounce rate, and we're going to talk about it again. So this is something that you always want to keep an eye on. As you can see, we've got quite the range here. So by default, Google Analytics considers a visitor to have interacted with your site if they visited at least 1 additional page. So the bounce rate is people who didn't do that. They just came and they looked at that 1 page and then they left. So keep that in mind. A lot of people ask what a good bounce rate is. So I'm going to tell you. 26 to 40% is considered excellent. Most people don't get that, but you know, it's something to shoot for. 41 to 55 is average. And as you saw on the screen before, you know, that's pretty much where we were at for a lot of those referring sites. 56 to 70% is higher than average. You don't necessarily be alarmed. It does depend on the website, and we'll get into some of the exceptions in a second, so just hold on. Anything over 70%, you probably should be a bit alarmed about. It indicates you need to take a closer look at your website because your visitors may not be finding what they need, or they aren't sure what to do once they get to your website. And when that happens, people usually just get frustrated and click away and close out. But there's an exception. Blog posts, free pattern pages, news and events tend to have a high bounce rate by the virtue of what they are. And so that isn't necessarily a bad thing. If your visitors are finding exactly what they need when they get to your website, like the free pattern, for example, that means you are doing a good job. So you want to consider why people are viewing your website and what they're looking at. And that's something we can get into in a different one, is how to see, are they looking at it or were they looking at something else before they bounced away? But just keep in mind, like if you're promote patterns on your social media, that might be why you have a high bounce rate. So you don't need to panic. There's another thing you can look for in referral traffic, and that would be spammy referral links. So this is a rare problem, thankfully, but it is one we've seen crop up for our clients. And what this is fake referrals from other websites, and it's really annoying, to be totally honest. It's something that sometimes it works itself out, but you want to make sure that it's not indicative of some other hacking situation that could crop up. There's all sorts of wacky things that can happen, I'm sure you know, but you just want to make sure that your website is secure. So if you start to see stuff like this, that means you want to do a little digging, make sure that you've got all of your security certificates up to date and that kind of thing, so that you don't compromise your website or anything like that. And I do have, if you do see referral traffic like this, I did find a really great blog post that kind of walks you through the steps of figuring out how to combat that and get this taken away, because one unfortunate side effect is if this goes on for too long, it can ding you with Google. They kind of rate all pages based on a lot of factors that we don't need to get in here, but if you are getting fake referrals, that could actually decrease your domain authority. So that's not something you want. Okay, now that I've overwhelmed you with a lot of vocabulary and data and ways of looking at it, let's just circle back on how all of this can help you make better business decisions. First, it can help you see what's working, what social media channels are sending traffic to your website, and ultimately where to focus your time and money. You know, if you don't see Twitter in your top 10, that tells you you really don't need to spend a lot of time there, because if Ravelry and Pinterest and Facebook are up there, that's where your customers are, and that's how they're finding you. So keep doing that. Can also help you discover influencers who are sending traffic your way. We've had tons of clients who didn't even realize that someone posted a review because they actually purchased the product themselves. They didn't approach that client for free product. So when you see that, that says you can reach out and see if they accept sponsorships or other partnerships. So you can actually find some new and exciting people to work with this way. You can also discover other places that are linking to your site. So business listings or news articles, you know, maybe someone wrote about you and you had no idea. It happens more than you would think. So it's always good to check your referral traffics and see what's popped up. You can also see what campaigns are or aren't working. So again, if you have a lot of free patterns, you can see if those are bringing people to your website or not, or other campaigns, you know, you can sort and see like, oh, we did a huge push on Facebook, but somehow nobody ever clicked the links and they weren't in our top 5. So, you know, that was kind of a flop. And then also, if you see any retailers who are consistently sending traffic to your website, maybe you want to think about something like rewarding their efforts with a flagship status or some other perk. And as noted in the previous slide, you can spot potential security threats because hackers never sleep. There's all sorts of things they can do. You know, they can even attack your newsletter embed form on your website. So just keeping your eyes peeled for any red flags is always a good thing. Okay, questions. That was a lot of stuff. Here, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to stop the recording. And there.